In the previous program, we had left the BPF heading back to the Sakashima-Gunta area, where the main objective was to neutralize Japanese airfields on the islands of Ishikage and Miyako, being part of an overall plan concerned with the eventual assault on Okinawa. And, as I also said, this assignment would occupy 32 days continuous sea duty, being something not seen since the days of Nelson. However, as usual, it is not my intention to relate a continuous in-depth historical narrative, but rather one of only a limited complimentary guide to help illustrate the best surviving film I could find for inclusion in this program, giving greater attention to the usual big challenge of having to devise a suitable soundtrack to overcome the stark silence which most always bedevils the archive film of World War II.
Officer, watch proceeding to the bridge. Look out, proceeding to the bridge.
Make a signal, Chief Yeoman, please.
Currently in view are these scenes taken on board the carrier Illustrious. She was shortly to be relieved by the Formidable. But in the meantime, we're about to see the occasional deck landing problems which all carriers had to quickly deal with.
What the bloody hell's this? Let's get going, shall we? Come on, chop, chop! All right?
All clear, sir!
Let go!
Approaching the camera is the destroyer Quadrant. Not infrequently did these ships rescue downed airmen and return them to their respective carriers. The Formidable arrived in Sydney March 10th, and within a matter of days, after sampling the great Australian hospitality, she would head north to join the BPF. aircraft on the Formidable comprised of 2 Corsair squadrons and 1 of Grumman Avengers, plus eventually a handful of Hellcats, and the letter X was the tailplane designate of her aircraft. All were maintained by Fleet Air Arm personnel, while the ship's company attended to basic seagoing duties, and, as we will shortly see, cleaning guns was one such example.
Looks a bit dodgy.
Oh, don't show him how it's done.
Are you alright, Doc? Right, here we go. Where you off from? Look at the smile on this guy.
Well, go on then.
Yes.
Talk about being numbered.
Good age.
1, 2, 3, 4!
G'day.
Taking the slack, Sammy. You're holding it, something.
Strength 5 both ways. Delay 5 minutes.
Good.
Meanwhile, as the Formidable headed north, the carriers Illustrious, Indomitable, Indefatigable, and Victorious continued their operations in the Sakashima-Gunter area.
Any news of the aircraft yet?
Not yet, sir.
KG-5 was still flagship of the task force, along with the Howe, Swiftsure, Gambia, Black Prince, Argonaut, Euryalus, and numerous fleet destroyers, and they were about to experience their first kamikaze attack. On Indefatigable, a hangar fire was started when a plane hit abreast of the island's sick bay, and 4 officers and 10 ratings lost their lives. A near miss by a plane on Illustrious resulted in the remains of its rubber dinghy becoming entangled in the aerial masts.
All secure, sir!
Well done, Yeoman.
The Victoria, seen here astern of the Indomitable, also suffered a near miss by kamikaze aircraft, while the destroyer Ulster became stationary with the loss of some engine room personnel after a very near miss by a large bomb. She was later taken in tow by the Gambia. But now the task force heads south towards the Coodie replenishment area. Once the ships reached the replenishment area, various forms of fleet business was often conducted, like the occasional jack-stay transfer of personnel and the important matter of mail distribution, usually handled by destroyers sailing to and fro from Manus. This camera view of one such with no pennant number is probably the Grenville.
Right. Red cast.
Stand by. Let's go.
When I first saw this good close-up of a cruiser about to refuel, I was horrified when the film view ended just like you see. It was probably taken at Manus at the same time as these fleet train tankers, which would eventually relocate north to Leyte. But now, after having received a letter from New Zealand informing me of a film seen many years ago, which in turn caused me to embark upon some very frustrating detective work in finding a copy of this extremely rare film, here now as part of it, concerned with the destroyer Queenbar, departing Manus with a supply of mailbacks for the fleet.
So 12 of us, and you'll go what? 16. Have you got me? Just go.
That's it, lads. That's it.
So I'll move out the way.
Geezer, you are.
Oh, good goody morning. Hands high! Let's go! Keep working! Don't stop moving! Keep working! Don't stop! Good. let go.
Long time since we had a night in town.
That's my lot, I reckon.
All right, that's the lot.
Stand by. Get a shift on.
Acknowledge. Aye, sir.
After refueling from this unidentified escort carrier, the onboard views of Queenborough were ended. Not only did these carriers ferry replacement aircraft, they also performed combat air patrols. The heavy sea swells encountered in the Pacific did at times make flying conditions difficult with the steep canting decks of these light escort carriers. Savage archive film cut leaves only this 3-second shot of a Black Swan class sloop, but here is a longer view of the Victorious, to be followed by the Canadian manned cruiser Uganda. It was through a bizarre political situation that 2/3 of her crew voted to opt out of the war with Japan, and she would return home across the Pacific, where, not surprisingly, she was given a cold reception by the US Navy. Formidable, meanwhile, finally joins the BPF task force and prepares for operations in the Sakashima area. She would lose 2 aircraft to enemy fire on her first day.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
Now you're playing a bit.
Head up after.
Of interest, US President George Bush was a wartime pilot of one of this Avenger-type aircraft. Shot down on 2 occasions, he was indeed fortunate in being picked up from the sea, while some of his fellow aircrew members were taken prisoner and believed to be beheaded.
You're going the wrong way.
Temporarily, we're about to leave the BPF and concentrate on the East Indies fleet, commencing with some reviews taken at Trincomalee by an American camera unit. This is the cruiser London, and the escort carriers we saw were the Stalker, Shah, and Emperor, as meanwhile, immediately below, is the Bamborough Air Base, as the same camera unit took to the skies and affords us a good overhead view of Trincomalee Harbour. Shortly, we're about to see the submarine depot ship Wolf, with some boats of the 2nd Flotilla moored alongside. Sadly, 3 would be lost to enemy action, the Stonehenge, Stratagem, and Porpoise, which was the last submarine casualty of the war. Seen above the hospital ship and both alongside the Woolwich is a Tribal-class destroyer and one of the famous V's of the 26th Flotilla, which succeeded in sinking the large Japanese cruiser Agaro. Here again we see the 3 escort carriers, and shortly we will also see in the foreground another Tribal-class destroyer. 3 were attached to the East Indies fleet, Nubian, Eskimo, and Tartar. Fortunately, of this class, one is preserved in Canada, the wartime Newcastle-built Hader, and coincidentally, we're about to see the quarterdeck of the cruiser Newcastle, as I endeavour to profile some further ships that served with this fleet. The Newcastle spent some 2 years in eastern waters until being relieved by the Glasgow as the war came to an end. 4 Dido class also sailed east, and while the Argonaut and Euryalus ultimately joined the BPF, the Phoebe and Cleopatra remained in the East Indies fleet. This scene was filmed on board the cruiser Sussex, and as well as the London, 2 other county class, Cumberland and Norfolk, also served in these waters, plus the modified Dido class cruiser Royalist. Other cruisers would be the Achilles, which later joined the BPF, and 3 colony class, Ceylon, Jamaica and Nigeria. In July of 45, the flagship Queen Elizabeth would be relieved by the battleship Nelson, but with some footage more recently found in America, here is Admiral Somerville partly addressing the ship's company of his old flagship.
Or as soon afterwards as circumstances permit, you will be under my full command, and may your joint endeavours to uphold the high traditions of the Royal Navy in the service of...
Although this footage is similar in content to that seen in the first phase program, it does afford us more views of the Valiant and the flagship crew members. While trailing the stern of the Valiant, we will eventually see the Renown and Richelieu.
Off, Caps! Eternal Lord God, who alone spreadest out the heavens and rulest the raging of the sea, who hast compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end, be pleased to receive unto thy almighty and most gracious protection the persons of us thy servants and the ship in which we sail.
In April and May of 44, the EIF had been reinforced by the American carrier Saratoga and 3 destroyers, and after a number of airstrikes against Japanese oil installations at Sabang and Surabaya, they would return to the Pacific. Departing in line ahead, the ships bade each other a fond farewell, as viewed here from the flagship forecastle. I did hesitate about including this footage due to a similar feature in the previous episode, but with also finding in the American archives some rare colored film being taken simultaneously by the Saratoga of the East Indies Fleet, I needed this platform to introduce it into this program, which also, for the first time, allows us to see complete views of our capital ships, cruisers and some destroyers. One cruiser missing from this colored sequence was the Newcastle, having departed to Simonstown for a refit. However, from another source, I have also included some further colored footage which really displays the handsome lines of this town-class cruiser, whose ex-turret, I was informed, had been removed at Sydney.
Now hear this. Secure the specialty and anchor details. Set the underway watch. Experimental details prepare for Rainbow 1. The smoking lamp is out throughout the ship.
Engage target 3-6.
Continuing with more footage recently found in America, this again is material more relevant to the previous program, for the camera is on board the Indomitable late in October 44, and seen abreast of the Renown is the cruiser Phoebe, as the East Indies fleet sailed on Operation Millet, being an attack on the Nicobar Islands. The other carriers seen will be the Victorious, but we're about to view the C&C Admiral John Powers with Captain Eccles of the Indomitable.
Right, let's file for effect right away. Yes, definitely.
This is the destroyer Wessex R-78, to be followed by a view of R-37, the Whelp, of which Prince Philip was the first lieutenant. Later they would both join the BPF and have their pennant numbers changed, and by coincidence, both would transfer to the South African Navy in the early 1950s.
Let's have another look at 3-6, Brown. Right? Yes, that's right. Here you are. Target 3-6.
Probably now an almost lost naval art form, whereby a naval meteorology officer ascertains by balloon wind speed and air direction before flying operations, of which the Indomitable is now about to commence.
Piece of cake. Get moving.
Come on. Carry on round as far as you can. That's enough. Okay, she's free.
Good show. And we may see some Hellcats on armed quay.
Landing on was always more precarious than takeoff, and as we just saw, this pilot was lucky insomuch his aircraft just slightly nudged the gun emplacement well of the flight deck, while the next two pilots caught it completely, and one was to tragically lose his life trapped inside his cockpit, with the carrier powerless to help as his plane sank rapidly beneath the waves.
What's all the fuss about it?
Bring a pole up when you still got the flattener in. Yeah. Ease it. Hang on, ease that first, right? Let that
By the beginning of 1945, all the fleet carriers had left the East Indies Fleet for the Pacific, and their role was now solely occupied by the escort carriers, one of which is seen here refueling the Paladin, while the other destroyer, the Radar, will shortly proceed alongside and collect the carrier's business mailbags. The carrier's identity is unknown to me, though I strongly suspect it's either the Emir or the Empress, and both carried a squadron of Hellcats with provision for rocket launchers mounted under their wings. Certainly as the war shifted ever closer to the Japanese mainland, the area of operations of the East Indies Fleet were becoming more generally regarded as just a backwater. But ironically, as we will shortly see, many naval personnel in this area did on occasions come into much closer contact with the enemy as compared with their counterparts in the British Pacific Fleet, other than aircrews, of course. Meanwhile, we're about to see a Hellcat being armed with rockets and then launched by catapult.
Yes, it's right there. So, why don't we just rock this end? Go about 3 inches this way. Yes, it's...
Engine won't start, sir. I've got it!
The East Indies Fleet was involved in various forays against the Japanese in the Arakan area, and, no doubt much to their chagrin, some naval personnel would find themselves detailed to assist beach landing parties. and perhaps this rare footage partly represents such an occasion.
Sharp!
Wait a bit aborted that joined the Navy.
Hold it. Patterson!
Stand by.
Okay, here we go.
Naval patrols off the enemy coast was an obvious commitment for the East Indies fleet, and here it would appear a small Japanese transport is about to be caught and sunk.
Ship approaching, starboard, sir. Action station.
Okay, starboard, in we go.
To my knowledge, this must be about the only known film record of the RN ever rescuing Japanese survivors during World War II. Most likely at Trincomalee, these survivors are now seen blindfolded being disembarked from a destroyer, and for a background, I thought this following pre-war Japanese recording of a well-known song would be humorously apropos.
Show me the way to go home.
After one of the largest naval battles in history, being that of Leyte Gulf in October of 1944, the U.S. Navy was eventually able to establish a large base in the Philippines ever closer to the Japanese mainland. And it was to this area of the San Pedro Roads at Leyte that the BPF retired after the first phase of the Sakashima operations. Here already ensconced was a large part of the fleet train, including the depot ship Tyne and the repair ships Artifacts and Resource, and much work had to be accomplished in the 8 days the fleet remained there before returning to commence the next phase of operations at Sakashima. In view we see the approach of the KG-5, and for many U.S. Navy personnel, it would be their first sight ever of a British battleship. The Implacable was the last fleet carrier to join the BPF, seen here about to be inspected by the King and Queen at Rosyth early in 1945, just after completing a refit. Of interest, the music being played was adopted by the Fleet Air Arm as their own during World War II, and some personnel did almost come to regard themselves as belonging to a separate service from the RN. In company with the destroyer Tumult, she would sail via Colombo in Australia and reach Manus by early June with her 2 squadrons of Seafires and 1 each of Fireflies and Avengers. This is a classic view of a light fleet carrier, and 4 of these new carriers, Colossus, Glory, Venerable and Vengeance, would comprise the 11th Carrier Squadron, joining the BPF just as the war was coming to a close, and their main task became one of liberating British territory still in Japanese hands, plus repatriation duties. As they sailed east, it was not unusual to exercise their aircraft, and in this one instance, a batsman was to have a lucky escape from being decapitated. The final 2 capital ships to join the BPF were, of course, the Anson and the Duke of York. Early in 1945, both ships were undergoing refits, the Anson at Devonport and the Duke of York at Liverpool, where she is seen here being inspected by the King and Queen shortly before sailing. In a moment, we will also see the smiling face of the much-loved Admiral Max Horton, who, clearly on this day, had an amusingly cavalier attitude regarding the non-fastening of his top tunic button. to view a picture, you're about to see a Lieutenant Commander Ferez Walker, who, more than any other person, took hundreds of photographs and saved for posterity much naval memorabilia salvaged from the many warships which were so wantonly discarded without any sentiment whatsoever. In 1973, he arranged a presentation to Australia of a memorial plaque to the BPF with items he had saved from the Duke of York when she was scrapped in 1958. In April, both Anson and Duke of York, in company with the destroyers Tucson and Tyrian and the new battle-class Barflower, sailed to join the BPF, and in the next episode, I will strive to present more of this great but almost forgotten fleet.